Dzień dobry, assalamu alaikum, ciao, konnichiwa, bonjour, hola, good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Ken at 10. Good morning to you and welcome to us live here in Southwest London, Southwest 16, Norbury to be precise, which is a Zone 3 commuting area with Streatham to the north and Croydon to the south. How are you? I hope you're well. Here we talk about property all day, every day, and once a day live at 10 o'clock, hence Ken at 10. So hope you're doing well today. Here in Southwest London, the weather is awful, actually. It's pouring down a rain, and it's one of those days where locally the drains are not very good. And you know, when they're just on that verge of overflowing, you just know one more downpour and all of the streets will be totally flooded. Welcome to Norbury. That's the bad side, but we are in an area which is a Zone 3 commuter area full of lovely people. And somebody asked me the other day actually why I greet you in different languages when I first come on, and that reflects the multitude of different cultures we have right here in Norbury. And it's one of the things that I find most inspiring about it actually is that we're always dealing with all sorts of people from all sorts of backgrounds, and it keeps me alive. Love it. So on to property news for the day. First of all, let's look at what the headlines are. Mortgage rates could fall. This is an interesting one ahead of tomorrow's big announcement, isn't it? Don't get me wrong. I don't think tomorrow's announcement is going to be anything positive. I do think that in the end, if you want to pull back inflation, then pain is a part of that process. So don't expect any great news tomorrow. But I saw this one and thought you might enjoy it. This is in the eye. Rates on fixed rate mortgage deals are expected to fall below 4% as soon as next year. This is not financial advice, of course, I hasten to add, but it does look like good news. It says that several lenders have already started to reduce their rates. We reported that to you yesterday, you may know. These banks have opted to pull back loan rates, having seen the cost of financing reduce. While the Bank of England has increased the base rate by 0.75 percentage points to 3%, many lenders had priced in a steeper hike. Markets are now expecting the bank to raise the central rate to a peak of 4.5% next year. Now, this is far below the previous forecast of around 6% and the average two-year fix, which is around 6.28 or 6.65, depending on where you look. That peaked at 6.5% and is now 6.07. And the HSBC, Halifax, Lloyds, NatWest have all reduced their fixed rates in the last week, with First Direct offering a 4.99% 10-year fix. Isn't too bad, is it really? Barclays had a good deal on last week as well, I saw. House repossessions creep up, and this is an article in the Mail and the Independent. One thing to note when it comes to a lot of these headlines, you know, sensationalism is news. Anything in between is boring. So, you know, do read between the lines when you see these things. Yes, repossessions have crept up. That's to be expected in a market of raising rates. By the same token, relative to the whole of market, they're not actually that large. Still, new data from UK Finance shows home repossessions rose 15% between July and September this year, compared with the previous quarter. Some 700 were taken into possession in the third quarter, while the number of buy-to-let properties taken into possession rose 11% to 390. Rising inflation and borrowing costs are blamed for the rise, and UK Finance figures also showed that 74,000 were in arrears, or 74,000 home owners, that is, are in arrears of 2.5% or more. Within the total, there were 28,000 homeowner mortgages with more significant arrears of 10% or more. That is still a very, very small proportion of the wide market. Nothing that's big enough to influence prices, certainly. The other thing I noticed was that the big six office markets have recorded the best quarterly take-up. This is interesting. What it shows is that office-wise, there's a lot of companies still out there and still taking up new space, which is good to see and encouraging. Of course, the Chancellor may have something to say about that tomorrow in terms of what he does with tax and capital gains tax. We will report that for you as soon as we hear it here. The dry summer has stacked up record subsidence claims. Now, subsidence comes around when we have land slip or heave, that is land slipping away beneath the house. And this often happens in the summer where the ground underneath the house gets exceptionally dry and therefore the level actually changes and then the house slips. If you're on London clay, particularly, it's a problem. And here in Norbury, we're mostly on London clay. So many houses do have this issue. And it's something that does need addressing. If you're not sure whether you have it or not, then there are various routes you can take. If you're really, really worried, then you can employ a structural engineer. Not a surveyor, an engineer is the one that will actually measure it for you. Or you could get in touch with your insurers if you're worried. But first of all, get some advice, probably from friends, family, or professionals that you know within the industries, because quite often they can lend some perspective. Most houses have cracking. It's a question of the extent of that cracking as to whether it's a big issue. I can't let today go by really without discussing Awad Ishak, and this is the young lad who was just 2 years old and died. And it was found to be to exposure to mold growth, black mold growth. And that should be a defining moment for the housing sector, is what Ms. Kearsley, the coroner, said. And let's hope she's right, because it was awful. This was actually due to the local authority managed by Rochdale Borough-wide Housing that didn't actually take action at an earlier stage. Intervention is part of this, and it's very, very sad. And my heart goes out to the family of that poor young boy. And I hope we learn lessons from it. But I would say one of the lessons that can be learned from it is that education is a big part of this as well, I'm sure. And, you know, if you do have black spot mold, we do have a leaflet on it. If you'd like us to email it to you, you're most welcome. If it helps you, that's great. Bleach and warm water can be very useful as well. Ventilation is also key, and even heat throughout the property. And I know that's difficult to do. And ironically, one of the things that really helps is to open windows and have heat at the same time. And I know in these days of big bills, that's a really hard thing to achieve. The other thing is drying clothes indoors. It is a massive issue. That when you have wet clothes, bear in mind, that has to go somewhere. The moisture in those clothes, it doesn't just disappear. It ends up on the coldest wall in your house. So make sure that you have your washing maybe over a bath where there's extraction and where humidity is expected, rather than in a room. Because if you're drying clothes in a room and coincidentally that's where you're finding the mold, that's because you're drying clothes in that room. So well worth a look at that. And things like when you're boiling water, try and get extraction on if you can. Keep windows open when you're cooking. You know, it's a real problem, mold, and particularly at this time of year, as it gets colder, all the windows are closed. We become hermetically sealed boxes if we're not careful in order to save money, and that's understandable. But the flip side is mold is a big issue, and you do need to think about cleaning that up whenever you can and getting specialist advice when that's just not working. Apart from that, hope you're having a good day today. So far today, just come in and we've got several offers on the table for our vendors, which I'm pleased to see. And yeah, the market moves on apace. We've got 4 new instructions coming up and discussing with lots of people about timing, whether the timing is right for them, and valuing a number of properties this week as well. So it's good to see that even in times, tough times like today, the market does move forward. People still buy, they still sell. People still call us and say, I'm looking. People still call us and say, you know, I want to move, I need to move, various reasons. And those motivations are key at this time of year, we find, as to the best advice. And that's what we always look to give. Even if it means that you're not moving through us or not selling right now, we'd rather tell you that and say, look, it's not right for you for these reasons, rather than move you just for the sake of it when we know in our heart of hearts it's not right. So look after yourselves. Ciao.